Hey everyone, I'm Kristen, the cross-stitching runner, and welcome back to my second episode of Flosstube. Today is Saturday the 29th of May and I'm coming to you from Malua Bay in New South Wales. For everyone who is coming back to see this episode, thank you so much for your comments, for subscribing and for watching my first episode. If you haven't seen the first episode, if you do go and watch it, please be warned that you will need to have the volume up quite high on the device you're using, because when I had recorded that particular episode, I was using a different microphone, and even though I was talking at a comfortable volume, if you and I were talking face to face, it was really soft. So thank you so much to the people who did watch that episode, and your patience with trying to hear what I was trying to say. And also thank you so much for the people who have subscribed and want to hear more about what I have to say with cross-stitching and some of the things that might be happening in my life. So again, thank you very much. Today I'll be talking a bit more about some of the projects that I'm working on, and I'll also be talking a little bit more about hot cross stitching. In my first Flosstube I had hinted at a bit of a business thing that I'm working towards, and in this particular episode I'll be able to show you a bit more of the things that I am working on, and I'll also be able to show you a quilt that I made out of many patterns that I had done or had stitched that were actually by Fiona Jude. Her business name is Country Threads. So she does a lot of Australian based, Australian themed designs, and they are super easy to stitch up. So regardless of what your skill levels are like, but especially if you're sort of beginner intermediate stitching and you don't want to do full coverage cross stitch, but you don't want to do really small designs either, I think her designs are absolutely awesome. So I will show that quilt to you a little bit later. The reason why I'm showing it to you today rather than say maybe the first episode or any other timing is I actually have the quilt here at Malua Bay. So I figured that would be absolute opportune time to be able to share that with you. So what I'll do now is show you some of the WIPs that, or works in progress, that I'm doing intermittently amongst many other projects. I tend to flip between multiple projects just based on what I'm feeling like at the time in terms of stitching what I want when I want. So this first project I've been stitching on for quite a while. I have talked a little bit about it on my blog called The Cross Stitching Runner. So this one is a Heaven and Earth design, and it's called Moonlit Waters Fairy. I hope I'm getting that name right. I will actually have the proper heading in the captions below. Okay, so I've got a few threads a bit loose, so I'm getting myself a little bit tangled up on it. Okay, so this is where I'm up to at the moment. I have stitched pages, the first 3 pages, so the first 2 across and then 1 going down, and I'm working on the 4th page where you see a bit of the moon and the start of the fairy's wings. And this has been for me a bit of a love-hate kind of project where I'm stitching this on 25 count fabric. I can't remember if I've got this as if it's even weave or anything like that. So I'm just going to open up the fabric so you can see how big the project will be. Okay, so this project should be roughly an A3 sized piece of paper, and because I've been stitching on it a fair while, it's got a few marks on the fabric and all, but by the end of things it'll be Sorry, my screen went blank. Apologies if I had a funny look on the face. So what happens here is, because it's full coverage, any marks that are on the fabric, they'll most likely get hidden. I probably will give it a wash when I'm done. I'm using all DMC threads, and I'm doing one thread over one square. So it's, I think this is probably one of the first Heaven and Earth's, or even first full coverage that, actually no, it's not. I lie. You'll actually see my first full coverage on the quilt, but it's probably the first full coverage that I may have started on this size fabric. That's probably it. The first full coverage on 25 count, and doing 1/1. So it's been a bugbear, partly because I started off on a paper pattern. I then, over the years, especially through watching many other Flosstube channels, that I came across Pattern Keeper. My goodness, if you guys haven't come across Pattern Keeper and you're doing full coverage and all the rest, I totally recommend you guys checking it out. You do have, you will need an Android device, so that could be your phone, or it could be one of those pad things or whatever they're called. I don't really use those pads at all, but yeah, whatever it is that makes your life a bit easier, it's an absolute game changer. After coming across Pattern Keeper, I decided that I would actually purchase the PDF version of Moonlit Waters and then import it into Pattern Keeper. This was before I could take maybe photos of the pattern and import it into Pattern Keeper. But hey, I'm glad that I've purchased the PDF and imported it. What I hadn't fully appreciated with the time difference, because I'd initially purchased the paper pattern many years ago, and I hadn't accounted for any floss changes that DMC would do. So floss changes meaning they would release new colours, and that they might cancel some other colours for different reasons. And that's actually what happened with this particular pattern in terms of Moonlit Waters, where the person at Heaven and Earth Designs has done a phenomenal job with updating the patterns to include some of the low level numbers, so numbers 1 to 25, for example. It might even go up to 1 to 35. I can't remember exactly, but it's good that the patterns are kept up to date in that sense, and that has thrown me a little bit off balance with Moonlit Waters, but I think it could be a positive thing because it keeps me troubleshooting, keeps me creative in that sense of figuring out what it is that I can do as a stitcher to balance out and compensate for those sorts of changes. So with Pattern Keeper, I love that I can just press a symbol and it'll tell me straight away what thread I need to use for that symbol. So I love it. I can't rave enough about it. But I know that some people do prefer paper patterns for whatever reason that may be, and that's totally cool too, because when I'm reading books, for example, I do enjoy reading. I appreciate the value of a Kindle and similar devices. I do struggle with holding on to a device to do reading because I prefer being able to hold a book and physically turn the pages in that sense. It's just the aesthetic and what I've grown up with and what I'm used to. So that's totally cool. With that in mind, in terms of paper patterns, this next project I'm going to show you is actually part of WIP Go, one of the numbers that got drawn for the month of June. And so with this particular project, this one is called, I think it's called Trio of Dogs or Three Dogs. I've lost the cover page for this particular project, but I will insert a picture somewhere on the screen so you can actually do a comparison of what I've stitched so far and what it will look like. So I've nicknamed this particular project Three Labs or Three Labradors, because it's going to be three puppy Labradors, a dark chocolate brown or dark brown, I guess a medium brown, and a golden Labrador. And I actually purchased that one as a kit. I might have purchased it online. I can't remember the context. I've had that one for a while, and it actually came with pre-gridded fabric. I'm not sure if it'll show up on the camera. Actually, it's actually looking okay. You might be able to really faintly see the grids, and so it's 10 by 10 grid. And this is probably the first time that I actually have stitched on gridded fabric, though with the spot that I've started stitching on that actual fabric, I'm not relying on the grid lines for it. And it came with anchor thread, and one of the things that I'm struggling with that particular project is a combination of things, where it might be the age of the project, it might be the quality of thread, it might be the needle I'm using and how I'm actually stitching, where I'm finding that the thread is fraying and breaking. And it could also be the fact that I might be having the thread a bit too long. So with the way the thread pack came with the project, what happens is that it's not cut to a particular length, so I can unwind as much thread as I want or need from the pack. And I'm in the habit of actually doing like my arm length and then folding it in half. So if I'm doing 2 strands, and I'm stitching this one with 2 strands of thread. And also what I'm doing is, I think this one might be 16 or 18 count. Actually, this might even be 14 count. It's one of those sorts of counts. It could be 14 to 18 count. I can't remember exactly. Hopefully I'll have those details for you in the description box below. So that picture I'm also stitching up for my boyfriend. I remember when I'd finished a fishing picture for him, and the fishing picture I actually showed in my first Flosstube episode, and you'll also see this particular fishing picture on my blog as well, and I'll have a link below for the link to the blog. And that particular project, when I finished it, I said to my boyfriend, look, I've got a few puppy dog pictures and projects and such. Which one would you prefer? And he chose that one. So hopefully with WIP Go I'll be able to get a bit more of that project done. So with WIP Go, I'm starting to taper out a little bit, or get a little bit sidetracked. I decided to do WIP Go this year because I've heard about it over the years from different Flosstube people that I really like watching, and Jessie Marie Does Stuff is one of the people I regularly watch and love hearing about what she's doing, what project she's working on, and that kind of thing. And I know that she's the person who actually started this whole WIP Go as a way of her actually just getting through some of the works in progress that she has. And the WIP Go board is based upon the bingo board. So the idea is that there are 25 squares, and it's up to you to decide as to what projects you want to assign to what numbers from 1 to 25. And using a random number selector kind of app on her phone. Jessie Marie presses a button and it will bring up two numbers, and the aim is to work on those two projects for a particular period of time, or whatever the goal might be you set for that particular month. And as I'm talking, I'm also reminding myself that in the month of January this year, 3 numbers were called. So it was the number 13, and I can't remember the 2 other numbers. I don't have my WIP Go board in front of me at the moment, but I have been told through the Facebook group and all the rest, and when Jessie Marie was doing her first clip about the Flosstube, about the WIP Go board this year, that if the number 13 is drawn as one of the numbers for the month, she will then draw a third number, because the aim of the number 13 on the WIP Go board is for it to be a free space. So people can do whatever they want with that particular square space. And I'm not completely sure on the reasoning for that, but I figured, hey, I could use that as just a free space to say, okay, look, that's just a square that's been marked off. Or I could assign maybe a particular project or a particular goal or something with that number. I think in the end I might have used it just as a free space. I can't remember. But with WIP Go, what I have learned so far is trying to achieve 250 stitches per project per day. It's not achievable for me at the moment. It's all good if I am on holidays and I have an extended period of time off work, and when I'm actually working full time, it's not practical for me. So I work full time, and I spend a lot of my time in front of the computer as well. So it's something where I feel that I need to get up and move, and I go to the gym about 5 days a week, and I run when I can. So that's a little bit of why I've called myself the cross-stitching runner, because I cross-stitch nearly every day and I run when I can. So yeah, I find that I need to sort of get up and move, because my body just hurts if I am sitting down way too much. But I've gotten sidetracked. Let's get back to the cross-stitching stuff. Okay, so the next few projects I am about to show you are my designs. These designs are connected to hot cross stitching. So the aim with hot cross stitching is 2 things. One is the pattern design that people can purchase to stitch themselves, and the second component of hot cross stitching is teaching people how to cross stitch. And at the end of this particular episode, I'm going to ask you guys a couple of questions, because I would really love to hear your feedback about some thoughts and ideas and questions I've got that I hope you guys can give me a bit of feedback on, and it would be really appreciated. Okay, so this first picture doesn't really look like much, but I'll include a photo so you can see a comparison of what I've stitched and what I'm aiming to achieve once I've finished the picture. So this particular project has a few threads attached to it. So I'm a cross-country kind of stitcher, and that's why I sometimes try and do a bit of parking, but it doesn't always work that way. So this series of brown blob, so to speak, is a picture that is going to be called Jaffe. So with the photo that you will see on the screen as well is a photo that I have taken of my family's cat called Jaffe, and she was a country cat through and through. So she grew up on the farm, and she passed away on the farm. And when I took that particular photo, it was in the afternoon. She had finished eating dinner, and I was fussing around in one of the sheds that Mum and Dad have, and she came in and sat down on the chair that's in that shed, and was just like, yeah, okay, just chilling out. And I had my camera with me, so I thought, no, I'll take a couple of photos of her and see how the photos turn out. And that particular photo of Jaffe, I'm really proud of. I really do like how that photo turned out, and so I've converted it into a cross-stitch picture, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how the picture turns out. So I'll just bring it back up again, the picture, that project. So this particular one, it's going to be all in DMC thread, and at the moment I'm stitching this on 18 count Aida, and I probably won't have enough fabric for the completed project, but hopefully I have this around the right way. So it probably won't be big enough in terms of the fabric for the full picture, but my aim is to really focus on Jaffe's face and a little bit of her shoulder, but I just love her face and her eyes, and I just wanted to really try and capture that in the photo and capture that in the cross-stitch picture as well. And with all of the patterns that are available on the Hot Cross Stitching website, they're all photos that I've taken and I've converted to cross-stitch patterns. And with those particular patterns, majority of them will be full coverage, and many of them will probably need to be stitched on, say, 25 count. But it's also something where as a stitcher, you also will have that flexibility of choosing a fabric that works for you, in the sense that, okay, if you want to stitch maybe some of the other pictures that I'm about to show you, but you don't want to stitch on 25 count, then that's totally cool as well. You just may need to buy some bigger or more fabric to stitch it on the sizing that suits you. So with some of the pictures I'm also about to show you, they're on various sized fabric counts as well, so you'll actually be able to get a bit of an idea of how some of those pictures will look on the different counts. Okay, the next picture I have to show you is one that I've called the Blue Mountains Scenic Walk, or something very similar to that. I really should know the names of my patterns a lot better. I'll get there. I'll also have a caption below to have the correct wording. So this one's good. I've actually nearly dubbed a lifetime project. So at the moment I'm stitching this horizontally. That's got a lot to do with the way I actually was able to convert the picture into a cross-stitch pattern. So when it's done, it's actually going to be vertical or in portrait view, and I'm stitching this one on 25 count easy grid, and the pink squares are 20 by 20, and I'm doing this 1/1. And when this picture is complete, it's actually going to be really big. Okay, I'm not going to be able to include all of the fabric in the thing. I'll hopefully be able to include a picture of how much or how big it will be, but I just love the picture. I love the photo. Probably a few years ago, my partner and I, we were up at the Blue Mountains for his birthday, and it was really, really foggy when we got there, and just with the way the weather was and all the rest, and I think it even rained. It was lots of rain at one stage, and of course on his birthday it was raining, but it was a good challenge just to get a feel for the area and have a look around. So the Blue Mountains is in New South Wales. It's probably 2.5, maybe 3 hours away, northwest of where we live in Canberra, and it was a nice comfortable day drive to get up there. So the Blue Mountains are, I guess, part of the Sydney region. Katoomba, sorry, I'll pronounce it better, Katoomba is where the Blue Mountains are, and yeah, beautiful spot. And when we went to the viewing platform to see this rock formation called the Three Sisters, it was really foggy, like really thick fog. We couldn't really see very far at all. And I think the next day, or maybe one of the day, I think the day we were maybe due to leave, the fog cleared and it lifted, and it was like, oh my gosh, like our minds were almost blown, so to speak, where we were just amazed that at the viewing platform, the Three Sisters, distance-wise, it felt like they actually weren't very far away at all. So maybe only a few hundred meters away, because we had no idea, like in terms of spatial awareness, when the really thick fog was there, we just had no idea about distance in terms of where that rock formation was or is. So with the Blue Mountains walking trail picture that I'm stitching up and that I took the photo of, that was just part of us walking around checking out the area, and it was a very comfortable walk to get down to that particular spot. And there were quite a few people around as well, and it was just a really nice long weekend that we had up there, and we would love to be able to head back up there again. So the next picture I have to show you is another one of my designs, and it does have a lot of threads hanging off it. This one is called Dewdrop Daisy, and yeah, my apologies, I'm really sorry about the threads, I can't do much about them at the moment. So Dewdrop Daisy is a photo I took of some flowers that are in the front garden of my home, and I think it must have rained, or it had been really foggy, and it was just the dew from the fog or from the rain, something, and it just looked really nice seeing the dewdrops on the petals. And this particular picture is being stitched on, it could be 25 count, 28 count, but it's definitely a count that's in the 20s. I hand dyed this, and it could have changed the fabric size, because I'm looking at the back of this fabric and I'm just trying to figure out what the sizing could be. But I'm stitching this all in DMC colours, and I'm stitching it 2 over 2, so 2 strands of DMC thread over 2 squares of the fabric. And yeah, it's being stitched. I'm using Pattern Keeper to stitch this pattern or this design. I'm also using Pattern Keeper for the Blue Mountains picture as well, and for this particular picture, for this Dewdrop Daisy one, it's a good thing and a bad thing that I'm using Pattern Keeper with it, where for the most part I have been okay with stitching. One of the struggles I have is for a lot of the dark background that you're seeing on this picture, I've mucked up. I haven't counted very well, and I need to add 3 stitches for, I guess, maybe the column over this side. And adding stitches isn't a problem. If anything, it's a blessing, because I don't have to frog, I don't have to unpick anything. And so that's where I'm thankful that I need to add stitches rather than take them away. The challenge I have, however, is where I'm stitching a part of the petals. So I'll just bring this back up again. So where you see the petals under the dark background, the challenge I have is I updated the pattern a little bit in Pattern Keeper, and actually no, rephrase, I updated the pattern in a different application, then I re-imported the updated pattern into Pattern Keeper, and I started using the updated pattern and I've gotten myself really confused about where I need to be stitching in the petals. So this is where I've started. I found the end of the page over here, and I have started stitching from right to left, and I'm hoping that I'll eventually meet up where I've already stitched, and I'll hopefully be able to find a happy middle ground. And the really awesome thing with full coverage is I can make modifications, and as long as they're not dramatic modifications, it'll balance out. So the modifications I'm talking about is if I stitch 1 or 2 squares here and there in a different colour, as long as they're not like dramatic differences, like I stitch maybe a green where an orange should be, or as long as I don't stitch a purple where a blue should be, or something along those lines, then it'll be okay, it'll balance out. I'm just feeling annoyed at myself that I've mucked up like that, but it's all part of the learning process, I guess. So it'll balance out, it'll be nice. Yeah, I am looking forward to seeing more of the petals and getting closer to the centre of that flower. And I guess the other interesting thing with the project, I'll actually show you the full size of the fabric, and then you'll actually get to see quite a lot more of the threads and how much of a mess it's looking. So this is roughly the main size of the fabric, and hey, because I'm stitching this 2 over 2, I may run out of fabric, but by the same token, I don't care. In this particular case, I don't care that I'm going to potentially run out of fabric, because my aim with a lot of these patterns that I'm stitching and sharing with you, in terms of sharing my progress with you, is you're able to see how these patterns are coming about. And if you decide to purchase any of these patterns, then you'll be able to have a bit more of an informed decision on what sort of fabric you want to choose to use to stitch on the pictures. So I'm hoping I'm also helping you guys out a little bit. Okay, this next picture, it's sitting in the hoop. I'm going to leave it as is because it's just going to be 10 times easier when I get back to stitching it. So this particular picture is my mini design. So this one is, I'm calling the Pink Bottle Brush Mini, and for all I know, there may not even be a flower called the Pink Bottle Brush, but I'm not very good with knowing flowers' names or remembering flowers' names, and so for the sake of things, just to make life hopefully a little bit easier, this one is based upon a photo I took of some really nice flowers that are here at Malua Bay in the garden that this house is situated on. And it was taken at night time, or dusk really, towards the end of the day. And with this particular picture, yeah, the background to me doesn't matter. So this is where I got rid of most of the background for the flower, and as much as this looks like a bit chaotic with different pinks and such being everywhere, hopefully you'll be able to see a comparison of what I've stitched so far and what it should look like in the end. And I'm stitching this at the moment just as a test piece on 14 count black Aida. It's all DMC thread, and I'm hoping it'll turn out quite well. And it's been a little while since I've put any progress onto this, so I'm hoping that maybe later this year I can put a bit more time into it, but it'll get there, it'll be okay. This next one I'm about to show you is my pride and joy so far. This one I've been working on for a few years now. I don't remember exactly when I started it. As time goes on, you'll actually find that I don't really keep many stats or statistics on how many not really how many threads, but maybe how many stitches I've done so far, how many I've got to go. I don't keep track of dates much in terms of when I started and when I finished a project. I will have a bit of a rough idea of how long it's taken me to complete a project, and you'll notice that with the quilt that I'll show you at the very end. But with this picture I'm about to show, it's the first pattern that I converted from a photo to a cross stitch picture that I have been really happy with its outcome in terms of how it converted over. And I have learned a few other things along the way with the pattern design and what I want out of a photo and what I want out of a pattern. But this one is, I'm calling the Gundaroo Mini Mushroom, and I'll just get it around the right way. Okay, so this is what I have stitched so far, and I'm about halfway, which is why you're seeing this side of the fabric looking quite vacant. And I am stitching down near the bottom of the pattern, and probably where you might see where the needle is, that might be near the bottom of the pattern. There are about, I think, 12 pages for this pattern. This is being stitched on 14 count Aida. It's all DMC thread, and there are parts of it where it has quite a lot of confetti, but I'm really happy with how this has turned out, and I love it. So this is my second project that has been called up for the month of June for WIP Go, and my aim for the rest of this year, if I do have any other projects come up for WIP Go, is just to spend time on it, to actually put some decent time and effort into it where I can, because there are some days I might have had just a long day of talking, a long day of providing training as part of my job, or I might have had to do a lot of thinking, like in terms of strategic thinking or something along those lines. I might have had a long day with the gym, for example, so I might have had a tough training session where I put a lot of my energy and my effort into the training, and I'm just feeling really tired. So there are definitely some days, especially in last few days, last couple of weeks, where I have just been so tired. I haven't done any stitching. So that's Gundaroo Mini Mushrooms, and you'll see on my blog especially the progress that I've done with that project. And yeah, definitely go and check out my blog, because the aim with that blog, well, especially when I started it, was to definitely talk about cross stitch and talk a little bit about my life, how things are going, and a little bit about my running. So I participate in fun runs when I can. I guess everyone knows what last year was like, so I guess I use fun runs as motivation to keep fit and keep active. And so my next run that's coming up is 5 kilometers or 5Ks, and it's going to be up in Queensland on the Gold Coast. And the 5 kilometer event or 5K event, fun run event, is part of a bigger event called the Gold Coast Airport Marathon. And so that particular weekend, or especially the 5 kilometer event, has been on my bucket list for a while, mostly because of its location. I mean, hey, who wouldn't want to go to somewhere nice, warm, comfortable in winter time, because this event is happening in July and it will be nearly the middle of winter in Australia, especially in Canberra, and Canberra can get a bit cold. Not as cold as other places in Australia, but it can get pretty cold at times because we do get snow up on the Brindabella mountain ranges or hill ranges. And when we've got wind blowing off those mountain ranges or coming up from Thredbo, which is a few hours south of Canberra, those winds get so cold. It makes life a bit uncomfortable, but the aim is that in July we'll be heading up to the Gold Coast for a few days, and I'll be able to participate in that event and also to get a little bit away from the cold in Canberra. And the other attraction for me for that event is, and for why it's on the bucket list, is my grandparents used to live up in that area where the event is happening, and whilst they're not living there at the moment, it would have been awesome to have done the event while they were there. So it would have been great to be able to see them when they were up there, but the good thing is they're here in Canberra, so I'm able to still catch up with them. So without further ado, I'm going to go and grab the quilt, and yeah, you'll get to see this other pride and joy that I have for the quilt. So just hang on, I'll just pause this and we'll come back really soon. Hang on. Hey everyone, I'm back again. I've got the quilt with me. I have tried to adjust the height of the desk that my device is on, that I'm recording this clip on, and I'm not going to be able to capture all of this quilt in the one shot, because the size of this quilt is big enough to comfortably fit on maybe a double sized bed, but this one also comfortably sits on a queen size bed as well, and yeah, it's quite big. So this is the quilt that I've done. So I'll just try and show portions of it so you can start to see what it's all about. You'll also be able to see a lot of this quilt and the progress that I did with this over time on my blog. So majority of the pictures or patterns, cross-stitch pictures you see on this quilt are country thread patterns, and some patterns are also from some cross-stitch magazines that I've had, and hopefully you'll get to see it all. So I'm just folding this up a bit so you can see a bit more. Okay, you can see the hay shed. Okay, I'll attach a link to my blog so you guys can go and check that out, because I'm going to need to maybe stand on a chair to be able to properly show you all this, but I'll include some pictures as well of this quilt. So I'm just going to adjust the height a little bit here, bear with me. My apologies for the sound. Cool. Okay, so that quilt that you saw bits and pieces of, and hopefully the picture you'll see up on the screen, the importance of the pictures that are on that quilt are heavily based upon the different features of the farm that I grew up on and my parents still own. And so there are elements of it where we have a hay shed, shearing shed, we've had different animals on the farm over the years as well. So we've always had cats and dogs, we've always had horses, cows, where mum and dad still have chooks. We have had ducks and geese, and we have had for a brief amount of time some sheep. And not that the sheep got shorn on the farm, because the shearing shed is not an active shearing shed, and it hasn't been used as a shearing shed for a very long time. Even when Mum and Dad first bought the farm, it wasn't an active shearing shed. That quilt initially I had put together with the intention of it being maybe like a birthday present, Christmas present, or something for my dad. But no, it sort of worked out that I don't think he was interested in having a quilt. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll hang on to it. It's no problems at all. So that particular quilt, I didn't follow any particular patterns or design for layout or anything like that. I did rely on Pinterest a little bit for getting ideas of a layout that I could do for that quilt, and I already had decided that green and blue would be the colours of the fabric that would connect all of the pictures together. It took me an average of 3 months per project to complete. So in between stitching those particular projects, I was stitching other things as well. So that particular quilt has been years in the making, and I did all of that on just a domestic sewing machine. And towards the end there, it got to be quite challenging because of how much there was to try and sew together. And the other challenging thing is I struggle to sew straight. I struggle to cut straight, especially when I'm sober. So I have poor balance and all the rest. I think it has a culmination of a few different things, but that sort of did provide to be an interesting challenge. But I liked the challenge because I got to troubleshoot along the way. I got to be creative. Sorry, it paused for a moment there, it froze for a moment there. So I hope everything's still recording okay. But I loved the creative component of that project and troubleshooting it. And the other part of the reason why this quilt has remained down here at the coast is I actually needed a lot of floor space to start piecing it together. And if any of you have done a quilt, you might understand what I mean about the amount of space that you need to actually start putting a quilt together, especially if you're talking about a fairly big quilt that might be for, say, a single bed or a tablecloth or anything larger. It starts to chew up the space a bit. But I guess also I just love the process of it. And with the fabric that I used for the back of the quilt is actually some fabric from an old bedspread. So the bedspread is started getting some holes in it, and with the way the fabric is for that bedspread and where the holes were starting to form, it was going to be a bit awkward to try and repair the holes. And so I thought, look, I don't want to throw it out because it's a lot of fabric. It was for a queen size bed, and I really love the colour purple. If you haven't quite noticed with the hair, I love the colour purple, and so I wanted to reuse the fabric. And I think I still have a fair bit of fabric left over, like not just from the backing of the quilt, but fabric that I've used for the green and the blue, and sort of all joining it together. And one of the things that I really loved about that project as well, in terms of piecing the quilt together, is standing up on a chair to be able to take some photos of how I've pieced it together and readjusting it and taking comparison photos. I think that helped a lot with figuring out what I wanted to do with it, how it was going to be. So in the end, it's all good, and I will eventually put together some more quilts, because I want to do another quilt to do with horses. I want to do another quilt based around cats and dogs, and I'd like to maybe even do another quilt for my boyfriend, based upon a lot of the things that he likes to do. So that way it's sort of is something for him that is special for him, and yeah, it'll be really good. So I did mention about halfway through this Flosstube that I have a couple of questions for people watching, and I would really love to receive your feedback. If you can drop a comment below, that would be absolutely awesome. So the first thing I'd like to know about is how you would prefer to learn how to cross stitch. So I know everyone has a different style of learning. Some people like to have someone sitting physically next to them and showing them how to do the motion of needle and thread and going through the holes of the fabric. And especially if you are stitching, sometimes you might prefer to have a hoop, or you might want to stitch in hand, or you might want to have some other kind of device that might hold the hoop and the fabric and everything for you, and you do two-handed stitching as well. Alternatively, would you want to learn how to stitch by watching a series of video clips from YouTube or somewhere else? Because I know that there are a lot of those sorts of clips already on YouTube, and all of them are really great videos, and everyone who has done those videos has done a fantastic job with them. So that's where I don't know if I'd be able to add any alternate view on how to stitch in that way with those sorts of videos. The other thought would be maybe, sorry, the screen went blank for me. The other thought would be doing Zoom sessions, for example. So the Zoom sessions would be regardless of where you're located in Australia, for example, or outside of Australia, as long as the time zones worked. Would you be interested in doing a Zoom thing? And I know that there are already Zoom catch-ups that stitchers do. If you just want to hang out and stitch and chat while you're stitching, that I know already exists. So I'm just curious about that component of things in terms of how you would prefer to stitch, or how you would prefer to learn, really. So the second question I have is based around the cross stitch patterns. So when I've been putting together my website, some of the feedback I've received from people is that they would love to see some of the finished pictures of what's been stitched up on the website, so they could see a comparison of, I guess, what the photo looks like of the cover page of the pattern in comparison with like a real life picture, so to speak, of the finished product. And the challenge there, similar to when some of you might go and purchase a heaven and earth design, that the pictures you see there aren't necessarily the finished stitched project, but because those pictures are just so beautiful, that I know that when I'm purchasing those patterns, I'm trusting that my picture is going to look very similar to that particular picture. So I'm curious about your views on that. How much weight, so to speak, do you put on seeing a stitched picture in comparison to just a painting or something that the picture is based upon. So I'm curious about that. I'll have the actual questions as captions below. So I'm just curious. I'd love to hear feedback on either question or both if you're able to. And yeah, thank you so much again for spending some time with me and hearing a bit about the projects that I'm working on. And if you do like what you've seen today, please like, please subscribe if you're so inclined, and also drop a comment or two below. It could be about the questions I've just asked, and it could be about anything else that you've seen in this Flosstube today. So thank you again very much for spending some time, and I will see you next time. Bye.